Most people who worked in Roman Vance's mansion had stories, loud ones. Stories about the parties, the luxury cars, the rooftop helipad. They bragged about the marble floors and designer furniture. But Isla Brooks? She kept her stories tucked deep inside. She dusted quietly, folded sheets without creases, said thank you and good morning, with a smile that never reached past her cheeks. At 22, Ayla lived like someone much older, too reserved for her age, too focused. It wasn't just habit, it was survival. She had been raised in Baton Rouge, in a neighborhood where porch swings creaked louder than the people who sat on them. After her parents died in a highway accident when she was 12, her Aunt Bernice took her in. No makeup, no short skirts, no boys. Sunday meant church, and Saturday meant scrubbing the steps. Isla wasn't allowed sleepovers, birthday parties, or cell phone apps that showed skin. She followed rules the way some people follow GPS instructions, blindly, because there was no other way to get where you were going. She never thought she'd work for a billionaire. That's not the kind of dream girls like her had. And yet, she was hired as a live-in maid for the Vance estate through a family her church helped. She took the job because the pay was enough to send some back home, because the room she was given in the back wing had a working heater, and because the mansion, though intimidating, gave her privacy. No one looked too long, and that suited her just fine. Except him. Roman Vance wasn't like the men in her old world. He wasn't chatty or nosy, but his silence was sharper. He spoke in clipped commands and tight nods. He walked like time owed him. She didn't know what his cologne was called, but it always hit her nose before he even entered a room. He owned over 35 luxury hotels across the country, each known for rooftop spas and glass elevators. He built his empire fast, starting with a renovation loan and a 6-room boutique he flipped in Miami. He didn't inherit wealth. He created it, and guarded it with a steel fist. He never spoke to Ayla directly, unless it was necessary. But that didn't mean he didn't notice her. There were moments, small ones, when their paths crossed. He once passed her in the hallway while she was carrying fresh towels. She bowed slightly, her eyes down. He didn't speak, but he paused longer than usual. Another time, she brought his pressed shirts to his closet and found his phone buzzing on the nightstand. She placed the shirts silently and left without a sound, even though curiosity tempted her to peek. The staff whispered about Roman's past women. They were always stunning, always temporary. Models, heiresses, daughters of people with power. Some said he had a thing for dancers. Others said he had no type, just rules. Never let anyone sleep over. Never date someone twice. Never let them call him babe. Isla didn't care. That world wasn't hers. She knew how to keep her head down and her apron clean. She woke up before sunrise, made sure his breakfast orders were accurate, and helped the chef prep for any private dinners. She always left before his guests arrived and returned when they were gone. She saw herself like a ghost in the house, a shadow in sneakers. That's how she liked it, until one night changed everything. But that night hadn't arrived yet. On one humid Thursday, Ayla walked into the guest library with a feather duster and a bottle of wood polish. She loved this room. It had books older than her, some with gold-rimmed spines and hand-stitched covers. No one ever touched them. The air smelled like aged paper and floor wax. She cleaned quietly, humming a soft hymn her aunt used to sing while ironing. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her, not hurried, slow. She turned, startled, and there he was, Roman Vance. Shirt sleeves rolled, tie loosened, no jacket. He looked like a storm walking through a museum. She stepped aside quickly. "Good afternoon, sir." He didn't speak right away. His gaze lingered. Not inappropriately, not like those boys back home who smacked gum and made crude jokes. Roman's look was calculating, curious, like he wasn't sure what to say to someone like her. "Who chose the flowers in the dining room today?" he asked finally. She blinked. That wasn't a question she expected. "I did, sir. The florist was late. I arranged the centerpiece myself." He nodded. It worked. Then he walked off. That was the most he'd ever said to her in one go. She stood still for 5 minutes before she could resume dusting. Later that evening, while washing her uniform in the staff laundry room, she wondered why he asked, and why her hands had trembled slightly after he left. She scolded herself. She had no business wondering anything about him. Still, that one moment had broken the pattern, and in Ayla's life, patterns were everything. 2 nights later, things were off from the start. The chef called out sick. So did 2 other kitchen staff. Only Ayla stayed behind to cover dinner. Roman's usual routine was to eat alone in the dining room, answer calls, and leave the dishes untouched. But that night, he stepped into the kitchen before she could carry out his plate. "Cancel the table," he said. She froze. "Sir?" He sat down at the kitchen island. "I'm eating here." Ayla swallowed hard, then nodded. She reheated the plate quickly and brought him a glass of water. He looked exhausted. His tie hung around his neck, undone. His eyes had bags under them. "You cook, too?" he asked. "Only when necessary," she said, keeping her voice light. Must have been a long day. She didn't know if that was for her or for him. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Eat." She hesitated, then obeyed. It felt strange at first, like a test she hadn't studied for. They ate in silence for several minutes. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you like working here?" She looked up, unsure how honest to be. "It's quiet. Safe." "Safe?" he repeated. "That's your standard?" "For me, yes." He studied her for a long moment. "That's honest." She nodded, unsure what else to say. He leaned back. "My mother left when I was 8. Never heard from her again." She blinked, startled by the confession. "I stopped expecting women to stay after that." Ayla looked down. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," he replied flatly. "It taught me not to trust too easy." They didn't speak after that for several minutes. Then, just as she rose to clean up, he stopped her. "You're different," he said. She didn't respond, because how do you respond to that? He didn't explain what he meant, and she didn't ask. But that was the moment things began to shift, quietly, like leaves falling in a still room. Most people who worked in Roman Vance's mansion had stories, loud ones, stories about the parties, the luxury cars, the rooftop helipad. They bragged about the marble floors and designer furniture. But Ayla Brooks? She kept her stories tucked deep inside. She dusted quietly, folded sheets without creases, said thank you and good morning with a smile that never reached past her cheeks. At 22, Ayla lived like someone much older, too reserved for her age, too focused. It wasn't just habit, it was survival. She had been raised in Baton Rouge, in a neighborhood where porch swings creaked louder than the people who sat on them. After her parents died in a highway accident when she was 12, her Aunt Bernice took her in. No makeup, no short skirts, no boys. Sunday meant church, and Saturday meant scrubbing the steps. Ayla wasn't allowed sleepovers, birthday parties, or cell phone apps that showed skin. She followed rules the way some people follow GPS instructions, blindly because there was no other way to get where you were going. She never thought she'd work for a billionaire. That's not the kind of dream girls like her had. And yet, she was hired as a live-in maid for the Vance estate through a family her church helped. She took the job because the pay was enough to send some back home, because the room she was given in the back wing had a working heater, and because the mansion, though intimidating, gave her privacy. No one looked too long, and that suited her just fine. Except him. Roman Vance wasn't like the men in her old world. He wasn't chatty or nosy, but his silence was sharper. He spoke in clipped commands and tight nods. He walked like time owed him. She didn't know what his cologne was called, but it always hit her nose before he even entered a room. He owned over 35 luxury hotels across the country, each known for rooftop spas and glass elevators. He built his empire fast, starting with a renovation loan and a 6-room boutique he flipped in Miami. He didn't inherit wealth. He created it and guarded it with a steel fist. He never spoke to Ayla directly unless it was necessary, but that didn't mean he didn't notice her. There were moments, small ones, when their paths crossed. He once passed her in the hallway while she was carrying fresh towels. She bowed slightly, her eyes down. He didn't speak, but he paused longer than usual. Another time, she brought his pressed shirts to his closet and found his phone buzzing on the nightstand. She placed the shirts silently and left without a sound, even though curiosity tempted her to peek. The staff whispered about Roman's past women. They were always stunning, always temporary. Models, heiresses, daughters of people with power. Some said he had a thing for dancers. Others said he had no type, just rules. Never let anyone sleep over. Never date someone twice. Never let them call him babe. Ayla didn't care. That world wasn't hers. She knew how to keep her head down and her apron clean. She woke up before sunrise, made sure his breakfast orders were accurate, and helped the chef prep for any private dinners. She always left before his guests arrived and returned when they were gone. She saw herself like a ghost in the house, a shadow in sneakers. That's how she liked it. Until one night changed everything. But that night hadn't arrived yet. On one humid Thursday, Ayla walked into the guest library with a feather duster and a bottle of wood polish. She loved this room. It had books older than her, some with gold-rimmed spines and hand-stitched covers. No one ever touched them. The air smelled like aged paper and floor wax. She cleaned quietly, humming a soft hymn her aunt used to sing while ironing. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Not hurried, slow. She turned, startled, and there he was, Roman Vance. Shirt sleeves rolled, tie loosened, no jacket. He looked like a storm walking through a museum. She stepped aside quickly. "Good afternoon, sir." He didn't speak right away. His gaze lingered. Not inappropriately, not like those boys back home who smacked gum and made crude jokes. Roman's look was calculating, curious, like he wasn't sure what to say to someone like her. "Who chose the flowers in the dining room today?" he asked finally. She blinked. That wasn't a question she expected. "I did, sir. The florist was late. I arranged the centerpiece myself." He nodded. It worked. Then he walked off. That was the most he'd ever said to her in one go. She stood still for 5 minutes before she could resume dusting. Later that evening, while washing her uniform in the staff laundry room, she wondered why he asked, and why her hands had trembled slightly after he left. She scolded herself. She had no business wondering anything about him. Still, that one moment had broken the pattern, and in Ayla's life, patterns were everything. 2 nights later, things were off from the start. The chef called out sick. So did 2 other kitchen staff. Only Ayla stayed behind to cover dinner. Roman's usual routine was to eat alone in the dining room, answer calls, and leave the dishes untouched. But that night, he stepped into the kitchen before she could carry out his plate. "Cancel the table," he said. She froze. "Sir?" He sat down at the kitchen island. "I'm eating here." Ayla swallowed hard, then nodded. She reheated the plate quickly and brought him a glass of water. He looked exhausted. His tie hung around his neck, undone. His eyes had bags under them. "You cook too?" he asked. "Only when necessary," she said, keeping her voice light. Must have been a long day. She didn't know if that was for her or for him. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Eat. She hesitated, then obeyed. It felt strange at first, like a test she hadn't studied for. They ate in silence for several minutes. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you like working here?" She looked up, unsure how honest to be. "It's quiet, safe, he repeated. "That's your standard?" "For me, yes." He studied her for a long moment. "That's honest." She nodded, unsure what else to say. He leaned back. "My mother left when I was 8. Never heard from her again." She blinked, startled by the confession. "I stopped expecting women to stay after that." Ayla looked down. "I'm sorry." "I'm not," he replied flatly. "It taught me not to trust too easy." They didn't speak after that for several minutes. Then, just as she rose to clean up, he stopped her. "You're different," he said. She didn't respond, because how do you respond to that? He didn't explain what he meant, and she didn't ask. But that was the moment things began to shift, quietly, like leaves falling in a still room. Isla didn't sleep that night. She curled on the small bed in her servant quarters, arms wrapped around her knees, eyes wide open. Her thoughts spiraled in slow, heavy loops. The ceiling fan hummed overhead, and the shadows danced along the wall, but her mind was silent, empty, terrified, pregnant, and not by just any man, but Roman Vance, the man who barely spoke, the man who could command a boardroom with one look, the man who kissed her once and disappeared behind silence. She wanted to scream, but she couldn't, because she had no one to scream to. There was no friend she could call, no sister she could confide in. Aunt Bernice would never forgive her. She'd spent a lifetime warning her to keep her name clean, to stay away from men who only knew power. Ayla had followed every rule. Until one night, now, the weight of 2 lives rested in her belly, unplanned, unspoken, undeniable. She stared at the pregnancy test again. The lines were still there, as bold and final as the moment they changed everything. The next morning, Isla moved like a ghost through the mansion. She didn't trust herself to speak, afraid her voice might crack. She kept her head down, hands busy, laundry, silverware, dusting the chandelier in the grand foyer. When she saw Roman's shadow approach down the hallway, she ducked into the laundry room and pretended to fold towels. Her body trembled with every movement. She heard his voice, low, commanding, as he gave instructions to the head of security. He didn't notice her. She didn't want him to, because if he looked too closely, he'd see it. The fear, the change. At lunch, she excused herself from kitchen duties and locked herself in the small staff restroom. She sat on the closed toilet lid, hands gripping the sink edge. "Calm down," she whispered. "You need time to think." But there was no calm. What would she tell him? That the girl who cleaned his floors was now carrying his children? She already knew what people would say. That she planned it. That she trapped him. That she saw dollar signs and used her body to cash in. None of that was true. And yet, none of that mattered. Truth didn't hold power when the world believed a better lie. She had to get out. The following week, Ayla kept her distance. She faked a stomach bug and stayed mostly in her quarters. She sent word to the housekeeper that she needed 2 days to rest. No one questioned her. She was invisible again. That, at least, felt familiar. She used the time to search online for clinics in Houston that offered prenatal care. She found one with sliding scale fees and took a bus there on her second day off. The nurse was kind, older, gentle in her touch and her tone. After a brief ultrasound and soft questions about symptoms and dates, the nurse gave her the news. "Congratulations," she said with a warm smile. "You're expecting twins." Ayla blinked, breath caught in her throat. Twins, not 1 heartbeat. 2. The room spun. Her hand gripped the side of the bed. "Are you all right?" the nurse asked. Ayla nodded slowly, but her lips didn't move. She walked out of the clinic in a daze. The city sounds were louder now. The cars, the horns, the wind slicing through narrow alleys. 2 babies, 2 lives she didn't ask for, but now couldn't imagine not carrying. She felt their existence settle inside her like roots, anchoring, changing everything. That night, she skipped dinner duties and walked alone through the small staff courtyard. She sat on the stone bench near the fountain and stared at the moon. "I don't want his money," she said out loud. "I just want peace." And she meant it. She didn't want headlines. She didn't want his pity. She didn't want to be some billionaire's secret or problem to fix. She wanted to raise her children far from judgment, far from cameras, far from the cold silence that followed one soft kiss. So, she made the choice. Leave before anyone finds out. It took her 3 more days to gather what little she had. Clothes, shoes, a Bible her aunt gave her, an envelope with her first few paychecks, mostly untouched. She wrote a short note and left it folded under her key on the staff desk. "Thank you for everything. I have to go. Please don't try to find me. A.B." She didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't look back at the marble steps or the high windows or the towering gate. At dawn, she boarded a bus bound for Dallas. No plan, no apartment, no family waiting. Just faith. Just courage. Just 2 tiny heartbeats inside her, giving her the strength she never knew she had. Roman noticed her absence on the 3rd day. The mansion was too quiet. His dress shirts hadn't been ironed the same. His morning coffee didn't have the faint hint of cinnamon he never asked for, but somehow missed. He waited 2 days. Then 3. When she didn't return, he asked the housekeeper. "She left," the woman said simply. Roman raised a brow. "What do you mean, left?" "She resigned. Left a note, said not to look for her." He didn't reply. Instead, he walked out to the courtyard, where she sometimes watered the flowers near the wall. The spot looked untouched. The last rose she trimmed still drooped under the sun. Something tugged in his chest. It wasn't anger or confusion. It was absence, a space left behind. Later that night, he pulled her file from HR. No phone number, no family listed except an aunt in Baton Rouge. No emergency contact. She had lived in his home for over a year and left no trail. That realization irritated him more than it should have. He was Roman Vance. He could find anyone. But it wasn't about access. It was about the fact that she hadn't wanted to be found. 2 days later, Roman flew to Baton Rouge without alerting anyone. He didn't send an assistant. He went himself. The address on her file led him to a modest single-story home with a chipped porch and sun-faded shutters. A woman answered the door, Ayla's aunt, Bernice. She didn't invite him in, didn't smile. She looked at him like she'd been expecting him and still didn't want to see him. "I don't know where she is," Bernice said before he could speak. "She's not here?" "No, she left your home months ago," Roman replied, watching her carefully. "I know, and you're not curious where she went." The older woman narrowed her eyes. "I don't need to chase someone who asked for space. She made her choices. And so did you, apparently." Roman didn't flinch. "She worked for me. She left without a word. I'd like to know if she's safe." "She's safe," Bernice said, "but scared. And that's what matters most right now." Roman stood silent for a long time, then gave a short nod. "If she contacts you, she won't," Bernice said flatly. "And if she does, I won't betray her trust." He walked away. The flight back to Houston felt longer than usual. He sat by the window, arms folded, eyes on the clouds. And for the first time in years, he didn't think about business, or mergers, or headlines. He thought about a quiet girl with tired eyes and hands that folded sheets like art. And he wondered what kind of pain made someone disappear without asking for a single thing in return. Dallas didn't feel like home. It didn't feel like anything at all. The air was drier, the buildings closer together. The buses ran late. The sidewalks cracked in places. But to Ayla Brooks, it was the only place left to start again. She found a room for rent in a neighborhood just outside downtown. It wasn't much. A single bed, chipped dresser, and a shared bathroom at the end of the hall. The landlord didn't ask questions when she paid 2 weeks up front in cash. That was a blessing. She couldn't afford questions anymore. Her first job came from a laundromat a few blocks away. They needed someone to fold and press clothes during the early shift. It paid little, but it was clean work. The owner, Miss Trina, was a retired school teacher who now ran the place with her son. "You're soft-spoken," Miss Trina said during the interview, "but you move like someone who knows pain. That's the kind of person who gets things done." Ayla nodded, thanked her, and showed up the next morning at 5:30 a.m. sharp. By the end of her first week, Ayla picked up a second job, night cleaning shifts at an office tower downtown. The hours were brutal. She'd leave the laundromat by 3 p.m., nap for an hour, then head to the janitorial job by 5:30 p.m. Most nights, she returned to her rented room after midnight. Her feet ached. Her back burned. Her shoulders throbbed. But she kept going, because now, everything she did wasn't just for her. It was for the 2 lives growing inside her. She didn't tell anyone about the pregnancy. Not the laundromat staff. Not the night crew at the office. No one. She wore oversized sweatshirts and thick aprons to hide the growing bump. Her appetite faded, not from sickness, but from survival. 1 meal a day. Water when she could afford bottled instead of tap. Prenatal vitamins were a luxury she skipped in favor of rent. Still, she never complained, never asked, never reached out. She walked everywhere, rode buses when her ankles swelled, slept with her arms around her belly every night, whispering prayers into the darkness. Stay strong, little ones. Mama's trying. Her only moment of peace came on Sundays. She'd walk to a small neighborhood church a mile away and sit quietly in the last pew. No one asked her name. No one stared. She never spoke, but she sang during hymns, even if her voice trembled. One Sunday, a woman beside her noticed her gently rubbing her stomach during the closing prayer. First, the woman whispered kindly. Ayla blinked, surprised, then nodded. The woman smiled. "Twins," she said softly. "I can feel it." Ayla didn't reply, but her eyes welled with tears. That was the first time someone else had said the word aloud. Twins, like confirmation that her secret existed beyond her. At 7 months, Ayla's body began to slow down. Her ankles swelled. Her back stiffened. Bending felt like a task designed to break her. She tried to keep working both jobs, but the night shifts became impossible. She fainted in the hallway bathroom of the office one evening. A janitor found her and called 911. At the hospital, the nurse scolded her gently. "You need rest. You're pushing too hard." "I can't afford not to," Ayla whispered. "Well, those babies don't care about your rent," the nurse replied. "They'll come when they're ready. You better be ready too." Ayla nodded through the lecture, but deep inside, fear gnawed at her again. Because ready or not, the moment was getting closer. It came faster than she expected. One rainy night, while mopping the back floor of the laundromat, she felt a sharp pressure. Then warmth. Then pain. Her water had broken. Miss Trina rushed her to the hospital, whispering prayers the whole drive. "Hold on, baby. You ain't alone. We got you." Ayla clenched her teeth and tried not to scream. Everything moved in a blur after that. EVs, monitors, scrubs, doctors speaking in low tones. The labor lasted hours. She held on through the pain with a quiet strength no one expected. Micah came first, red, wailing, tiny fists swinging. Zaria followed 4 minutes later, smaller but just as loud. Ayla cried only once, when both babies were placed against her chest, and stopped crying at the sound of her heartbeat. In that moment, everything became real. She wasn't a maid anymore. She wasn't a girl hiding in someone else's mansion. She was a mother. The nurse came in the next morning with paperwork. "Do you have a name to list for the father?" Ayla looked at her babies, then back at the form. "No," she said quietly. "Leave it blank." The nurse gave her a knowing look but didn't push. Ayla stared at the empty space on the form for a long time after she signed it. There was a story behind that blank, a story only she knew, and for now, that was enough. She left without a trace, pregnant, alone, determined to disappear from his world forever. Have you ever made a decision so painful, yet so necessary? Ever had to walk away from someone who'd never understand the weight you carried? This isn't a story about running away, it's about standing up, even when your knees shake. But what happens when fate brings the past face to face with the truth she tried to hide? Like, comment, and share if you believe real strength is quiet. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. You don't want to miss what happens when Roman learns the truth. 3 months after giving birth, Ayla finally learned how to breathe again. It didn't come easily. The early weeks were a blur of late-night feedings, diaper changes, and tears, hers and the baby's. Micah had a stronger cry. Zaria was quieter but fussier when held by anyone other than Ayla. They both clung to her like the world disappeared when she wasn't near, and she clung back, because in them She found the kind of love that asked for nothing. Love that didn't judge her for the mistakes she'd made. Love that didn't need explanations. Her body was slow to recover. She ached when she walked. Her stomach still felt foreign. She'd look in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. The doctors said she was healing well, but emotionally, she felt shattered and whole at the same time. Alone, but not lonely. Exhausted, but never more awake. The hospital gave her 1 free month of postpartum checkups, formula samples, and a pamphlet with local assistance programs. She didn't apply for any of them. She was afraid of systems, of paperwork, of questions she didn't want to answer. So, she relied on herself. She moved from the rented room into a smaller apartment, a single room in a walk-up building. The landlord was a middle-aged woman named Miss Gloria, who lived downstairs and minded her business. That was exactly what Ayla needed. The apartment had no AC, and the heater groaned at night, but it had space for a crib and a second-hand rocking chair she bought from a thrift store. She painted the walls pale yellow, using leftover paint from a construction site a neighbor worked at. Micah and Zaria slept in the same crib at first. She placed a pillow between them to stop their arms from flailing into each other. Sometimes they curled toward one another in sleep, their foreheads barely touching. That's when she'd cry the most, not out of sadness, but because even in the middle of a life she never planned, there was beauty. During the day, she worked from home, sewing basic alterations for a dry cleaning business that offered delivery. A customer had complimented her folding once. The manager learned she could stitch. Soon, she was taking in pants and fixing zippers from her apartment. It wasn't much, but it paid for diapers and formula. She only left the house for groceries, doctor appointments, and the occasional walk with the twins in a second-hand stroller. She kept her head down, just like before, but now, it wasn't out of fear. It was protection. For them. Roman's name never left her lips again. Not when the twins cried. Not when they giggled during bath time. Not when Micah held her finger for the first time. Not even when Zaria rolled over and smiled at her like she was the only person who existed. Ayla had let him go. Not because she hated him. Not even because she thought he'd reject her. She let him go because she needed peace more than presence. Because whatever had happened between them wasn't real to him. It was a moment. It was silence. And silence didn't build families. One afternoon, Ayla sat on the floor folding tiny laundry while the twins napped. She turned on a soft jazz station from her old phone, letting the background noise fill the apartment. As she folded one of Micah's onesies, her eyes caught a spot of stitching on the sleeve. A button had come loose. She reached for her sewing kit, threading the needle like she'd done 1,000 times, but her fingers paused. That button came from a shirt she had altered for Roman once, months ago. He had a navy dress shirt, one of the few he'd worn more than once. The cuff had been fraying. She repaired it, perfectly matching the thread color and trimming the edge. It had been a Saturday morning. He hadn't spoken to her. Just placed the shirt on the counter and left a note that said, "Fix if possible." No thank you, no small talk, just business. That had been her place in his world, necessary, invisible. And yet, he had kissed her, sat with her, shared a story about his mother that night. So why was it so easy for him to pretend afterward? Why hadn't he noticed her change, her distance, her pain? She shook her head, pressing her palm flat against the onesie to smooth the fabric. This wasn't the time to question the past. Her babies were her present, and her future. That evening, she stepped out onto the narrow fire escape to breathe in the night air. The city was loud below, cars honking, people shouting, but above, the sky was soft, still. She looked up and whispered, "Thank you." That was all. No long prayer. No list of needs, just gratitude, because even in struggle, she hadn't been forsaken. She had strength she never imagined, and the kind of peace no mansion ever gave her. The twins turned 6 months, then 9. Their eyes opened wider, their hands gripped tighter. Micah started crawling first. Zaria followed soon after, stubbornly beating her brother to the bookshelf across the room. They each had their own personalities. Micah loved lights, always staring at the bulb, the sunlight, the reflection on the floor. Zaria loved sound, her head tilted at any new music, any change in voice tone. Isla watched them grow and found herself growing too. She laughed again. She sang again. She didn't just survive, she lived. One Sunday morning, Miss Gloria knocked on her door, holding a small envelope. "This came in the mail for you. No return address." Ayla frowned and took it. Inside was a folded church bulletin from her home parish in Baton Rouge. On the back, written in clean block letters, "You're not invisible." Not to me. No name. No number. Just the message. Her heart stilled. She read it again. Then again. Her breath caught in her throat. It couldn't be him. Could it? No one else from that part of her life would reach out now. She didn't panic. Didn't cry. Didn't smile either. She just folded the paper slowly and tucked it in the back of her Bible. Because, whether it was him or not, she still had a choice. And no matter what door tried to open next, she wouldn't lose herself again. Isla didn't tell anyone about the note. She folded it neatly and placed it between the pages of Psalms, right next to her grandmother's funeral program. That was her sacred space. The only part of her life she kept completely untouched by fear. For the next few weeks, the days moved forward as usual. Mornings were filled with baby bottles, laundry, and gentle lullabies. Micah and Zaria had started babbling more, forming sounds that mimicked her tone, even if the words didn't make sense. She loved their energy, their messy joy, their way of turning chaos into music. But every so often, while wiping down the kitchen counter or checking the mail, she thought about the letter. What if it was Roman? What if he knew? She wasn't sure how to feel about that. Isla had expected rage from Roman the day she left. But that never came. No calls, no searching, no message, not even through legal channels. Part of her believed he'd moved on, filed her absence under irrelevant, but another part, one she rarely fed, believed he didn't reach out. Because he felt something too. That maybe silence was his apology. His way of stepping back instead of stepping wrong. She shook that thought off whenever it came. She didn't have the energy to hope. One Saturday afternoon, the twins were napping in their crib when the doorbell rang. Miss Gloria rarely allowed unannounced visitors, so Ayla opened the door cautiously. It was a man in his 30s, dressed clean, with a notepad and a kind face. "Hi, sorry to bother you," he said politely. "I'm doing some contract scouting for a local development project. Just wanted to ask a few questions about the neighborhood." Ayla's stomach tensed, but she kept her face neutral. "I'm not the owner," she said. "Just a tenant. Try downstairs." He nodded. "Will do. Thanks." He turned to leave, but paused. "Cute babies," he said, nodding to the crib visible through the half-open door. "Twins?" She nodded, but didn't smile. He tipped his hat slightly and left. As soon as she closed the door, her heart thudded. Not because she thought he was a threat, but because her world had gotten smaller. One wrong face, one curious stranger, one old contact, and everything could fall apart. That night, Ayla stood in the kitchen, staring at a note on the fridge. It was her schedule for the week. Babysitting hours, sewing pickups, doctor appointments. Everything normal. Everything stable. But her peace had a ticking clock now. She didn't know why Roman hadn't come. But she knew one thing. If he ever saw Micah, he'd know. The boy looked just like him. Same brows, same jaw, same stubborn stare when he didn't get his way. Zaria looked more like Ayla's father. Soft cheeks, round eyes, quiet gaze. But Micah? Micah was unmistakable. Across the city, Roman Vance was sitting at a polished glass desk in a penthouse suite, staring at a photo on his phone. He'd taken it during the Dallas Charity Gala a month prior. It wasn't a posed photo. It was a snapshot, captured accidentally when someone handed him a cup of champagne and bumped his elbow. The camera had caught a corner of the juice bar. 2 kids in the background, a boy and a girl, laughing, brown skin, curls. But the boy had his eyes. Roman had stared at that image more than a dozen times since. He hadn't told anyone, not his assistant, not his lawyers, not even his therapist, because it wasn't possible. Right? He remembered Ayla, how she left without explanation, how she kept her head down, but her presence somehow filled the room. He remembered the night in the kitchen, the kiss, the way she didn't flinch, didn't grab for more. The next morning, she disappeared behind her apron again, until she disappeared completely. He thought it was guilt or fear. But what if it had been something else? What if she was pregnant? He wasn't the type to assume. That's what made him dangerous in business. He verified everything. But when it came to Ayla, he hadn't verified anything. He'd respected her silence, let her leave, let her story stay closed. But now, there was a boy with his eyes, and a girl with curls just like Ayla's, and he couldn't unsee it. Back in the apartment, Ayla sat on the floor with Zaria in her lap and Micah crawling toward a picture book. The light from the window hit his face just right, his jawline, his lashes, his quiet intensity. She sucked in a breath. He looked even more like Roman now. She had hoped the resemblance would fade. That time would round out their features, blur the connection. But that wasn't happening. She reached out and gently touched his cheek. Micah turned and smiled. Ma, he babbled. It wasn't the first time he'd said it, but it hit her differently today, because she suddenly realized she couldn't hide forever. Later that night, she pulled out the church bulletin again. Read the words one more time. You're not invisible, not to me. She didn't cry, but she felt something move in her chest. For the first time in nearly 2 years, she whispered his name, Roman, not in anger, not in regret, but in recognition. He was still there, somewhere, and maybe, just maybe, he wasn't finished with their story. The annual gala for global hospitality innovation was a grand affair. It took place in the heart of downtown Dallas, inside the glass ballroom of the Lucent Hotel, one of Roman Vance's latest projects. Crystal lights glittered from the high ceilings. Strings of violins echoed through the room as servers floated by with trays of champagne and golden shrimp skewers. The guest list included developers, diplomats, investors, and the social elite of 3 major cities. Roman stood near the edge of the main floor, one hand in his pocket, the other, loosely holding a crystal tumbler with a splash of scotch he hadn't touched. He wasn't a fan of events like this, but he always showed up. Not for the cameras, for the control. His name needed to stay relevant. His brand needed to stay dominant. He didn't trust anyone to represent him but himself. Tonight, though, his mind was elsewhere. His assistant had noticed the shift weeks ago. Roman wasn't attending morning briefings like he used to. He skipped meetings for internal design revisions. He hadn't reviewed the annual report draft, which was unheard of. Something was off. Roman knew exactly what. A photograph he couldn't delete. A note that sat in his drawer unopened. A name he hadn't said in years. Ayla. The noise around him faded as his eyes drifted across the ballroom. A small children's area had been set up off to the side, a partnership gesture, with a local non-profit that served single mothers in transitional housing. The event included a surprise pop-in by volunteers who brought along a few children. Roman hadn't paid attention to the detail in the planning deck. He didn't know that meant toddlers would be here. Laughter burst from the juice table. He turned automatically, then froze. A little boy, no older than 2, was standing near the corner of the refreshments, a sippy cup in hand. Brown skin, sharp jaw, Roman's jaw, eyes locked with a seriousness too heavy for his age. Same gaze, same mouth. Standing next to him, a girl. Tiny curls, wide eyes. She bumped his shoulder as she reached for a cracker, then laughed. The boy didn't smile, but didn't move away either. Roman's hand tightened around the glass. Micah? It couldn't be. Could it? He stepped forward instinctively, but paused mid-step. Then the woman appeared. Ayla. She looked the same, but different. Her frame a little fuller, her eyes softer, but with edges sharpened by something life had taught her since she left. She held a small bag over one shoulder, gently bent down to wipe Zaria's mouth. Then she looked up and saw him. Everything in her body stilled. Roman didn't move. Neither did she. People walked between them, laughed, toasted. Cameras flashed. And yet, the air between them became a tunnel. No sound, no distraction. Just two people staring across a crowded room, with 2 years of silence hanging in the space between. He took a step toward her. She didn't run. She straightened her back, lifted her chin, and waited. They met near the corner of the ballroom, away from the cameras. "I wasn't expecting this," Roman said first. "I didn't plan it either," she replied, voice steady. "You left. I had to." "They're mine," he said. Not a question. A truth. "Yes," she said. She didn't elaborate, didn't explain. He glanced over at the twins, now sitting quietly on the floor playing with foam blocks handed out by a volunteer. Roman turned back to her. "You could have told me. You could have noticed," she replied, calm but firm. He blinked. "I didn't want anything from you," she added. "I still don't. That's not what I'm asking." "What are you asking?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. She nodded once. "Then maybe we shouldn't have this conversation here." Roman looked away briefly, then returned his gaze to her. "Can I see them?" "They don't know you." "They could." She didn't respond. He didn't push. Instead, he said, "Give me a place, a time, something." "I'll think about it," she said. Then she turned, walked back to the children, picked up Micah gently and held him close. Roman stood still as stone. He had spent years building towers that touched the sky, but nothing ever hit him the way seeing his son's eyes in real life just did. Back at the apartment, Ayla barely spoke a word as she put the twins to bed. She kissed Zaria's forehead, hummed the soft tune they loved, and watched her daughter's lashes flutter closed. Micah stared at her longer. He always did, then slowly drifted to sleep. Only then did she exhale. Roman knew. And he hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't demanded. He just stood there, with eyes full of something she hadn't expected. Regret. Or? She didn't know. But she knew one thing. The truth was no longer hidden, and nothing would be the same again. Ayla didn't sleep that night. She sat at the edge of the bed with her arms wrapped around her knees, watching the rain tap against the window pane. The twins were fast asleep in their crib. The room was still, but her thoughts stormed louder than any thunder outside. Roman had seen them. There was no more hiding, and the part that unsettled her most. He hadn't reacted the way she expected. No shouting, no accusations, no threats about custody or public image. Just quiet recognition, and a single question. "Can I see them?" His voice wasn't sharp or entitled. It was steady, honest, almost like he wasn't trying to claim something. He was trying to recover something he hadn't known he'd lost. But could she trust that? Could she risk their peace? The next morning, Ayla called Miss Trina to ask if she could come by and help fold a few loads to clear her mind. Trina noticed the tension the moment Ayla stepped into the shop. "You all right, girl?" she asked, squinting. Ayla hesitated, then nodded. "Just a long week." "Well, them babies sure made it through just fine," Trina smiled. "That boy of yours, Micah, he's got eyes like a hawk, watches everything." Ayla's heart stilled for a moment. That's what Roman had said too, just with his eyes, not words. She folded a stack of bedsheets in silence, hands moving by muscle memory, her thoughts circling the same question. Should she let him in? Not for herself, for them. That afternoon, she took the twins to the park near the community center. She didn't let them out of the stroller, just walked, letting the fresh air calm her nerves. She watched other parents chase their toddlers, offer juice boxes, laugh through tantrums, and she thought, they get help. They get someone to share the load. She loved her children. Fiercely, deeply, but love didn't erase exhaustion. It didn't fix the ache in her back or the fear in her chest when the rent came due. And Roman, despite everything, was still their father. They deserved a chance to know who they came from, even if it scared her, even if it meant reopening a part of her story she had closed without ceremony. That night, Ayla stood in front of the mirror holding a folded sheet of paper. She'd written it that morning. The words didn't come easy, but they came. Roman, if you still want to see them, come to the park on Sunday at 11. Don't bring anyone. Don't bring anything. Just come as you are, Ayla. She sealed the envelope and walked it to the post office the next day. No text, no email, just a letter. It felt old-fashioned, but that made it more real. If he cared, he'd show up. If not, she'd move forward knowing she'd done her part. Sunday came quickly. The morning sun was warm and the wind gentle. She dressed Micah in a navy onesie and Zaria in a soft yellow dress with tiny embroidered flowers. She braided her own hair back into a neat bun and kept her outfit simple: denim skirt, flat sandals, and a clean blouse. She arrived at the park by 10:45, found a bench in the quiet corner near the koi pond. She waited. Micah nibbled on apple slices. Zaria babbled nonsense to a butterfly. At exactly 11, Roman appeared. No suit, no car key fob, no sunglasses, just jeans, a grey t-shirt, and an unreadable look on his face. He walked slowly, eyes locked on the twins, then on her. She didn't rise to greet him. She let him sit first. He did, then silence, until Zaria noticed him. She reached toward him, hands out, giggling. Ayla blinked in shock. Roman smiled, just barely, and reached his arms out. Zaria practically lunged. She settled into his lap, like she'd known him all along. Micah watched warily but didn't cry, just clutched his snack cup tighter and studied Roman like he was calculating something. Roman didn't speak for a long time. He just held Zaria and watched Micah, then finally looked at Ayla. They're perfect. She nodded. They're strong. He shifted his gaze back to them. You've done everything. I had to. I should have noticed. Ayla didn't reply. She didn't need to. Roman knew. And sometimes silence is the loudest kind of truth. After a few more minutes, Zaria wiggled off his lap and crawled toward the toy ball in the grass. Roman watched her go, then turned to Ayla again. I'm not here to disrupt your life. She nodded. I'm not asking to take them, or claim anything. Her jaw clenched slightly. Then why are you here? Roman took a breath. Because I want to show up now. Not with lawyers, not with money. Just me. Ayla swallowed. He wasn't the man she left. Or maybe he was becoming something new. Still, she had boundaries. You don't get to pop in and out, she said quietly. If you start, you don't stop. I understand. I won't let them get used to someone who disappears. I won't disappear. She searched his eyes. There was no arrogance, no pity, just steady remorse and something deeper. Conviction. After an hour, Roman stood, brushed grass from his jeans, and helped Micah roll the toy ball back to Zaria. He didn't rush, didn't overstep. Before he left, he turned to Ayla one last time. Thank you for today. She gave a soft nod, then watched him walk away, hands in his pockets, shoulders low, like a man carrying something heavier than shame. Micah looked up at her. Who's dat? Ayla bent down. That's your father, she said simply, then kissed his forehead and whispered, We'll take it one day at a time. Roman had never been patient. He didn't build a billion-dollar hospitality empire by waiting around. He was known in every boardroom as decisive, calculated, and always 3 moves ahead. But parenting? That was a different game. And this time, Roman wasn't playing to win. He was learning to show up. The week after the park, Ayla received a note slipped under her apartment door. Short, neat, straight to the point. I'm free Sunday afternoon. Could we walk again? She read it twice, then tucked it into her nightstand. She didn't respond right away. She waited 4 days, not to play games, but to think. By now, Micah had started asking more questions, not with words, but with eyes. Whenever Roman appeared, he'd study him, carefully, slowly, like trying to solve a puzzle no one else could see. Zaria had no hesitation. Every time she saw Roman, she reached out like she'd been born waiting for him. The contrast between them made Ayla pause. Micah was her protector. Zaria was her dreamer. And Roman? He was something neither child could name yet, but they'd need to, because he wasn't going away. That Sunday, they met at the park again. Same bench, same time. Ayla wore a soft beige dress and white sneakers. Her hair was pulled back into a neat scarf. Roman wore a black polo and jeans. He brought nothing but himself. They walked slowly under the tall trees while the twins toddled just ahead, hands reaching for the breeze and low-hanging leaves. "Micah watches me," Roman said. "He watches everyone," Ayla replied. "No. He studies me," Ayla nodded. "He's cautious. Like you." She glanced at him. "I used to be." He didn't ask what changed. He already knew. They walked another loop around the pond, then sat on a stone bench while the twins played with pine cones on the grass. Roman leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I'd like to spend more time with them," he said. Ayla didn't flinch, but she didn't answer either. He turned to her. "I'm not trying to push, but I want to learn how to be in their lives, not just around them." Ayla looked at Micah, then Zaria. "Then, start small," she said. "Start like a friend." Roman blinked. "A friend? Someone they trust," she said. "Not someone they're told to love." It was hard truth, but he took it, and that was the beginning. Every Sunday after that, Roman showed up. No assistance, no gifts, no talk of money, just time. He helped them toss balls, wiped their hands after snacks, learned the names of their favorite songs. Zaria loved clapping games. Micah loved silence and puzzles. Roman never pushed. He just listened, watched, stayed, and slowly Micah began to come closer. He didn't call him anything yet, didn't reach for his hand, but he stopped turning away, and that, to Ayla, was everything. One afternoon, Ayla brought out a worn picture book Micah loved. He usually only let her read it. This time, he handed it to Roman. Roman looked stunned. Micah climbed into Ayla's lap, but leaned his back against Roman's arm. Roman started to read, slowly, stumbling once. His voice wasn't practiced, but the boy stayed, and Zaria crawled over and sat beside them, eyes wide. It was a quiet moment, but it shook something loose inside Roman's chest. That night, when he returned to his condo, he sat alone in his living room, surrounded by glass walls and polished hardwood floors. And for the first time in years, he realized how empty it all felt. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was cold. He picked up his phone and scrolled to a contact. He texted Ayla, "Thanks for today. I'll be better next week." Her response came 5 minutes later. "You did fine." He stared at her message like it meant more than it said. Because it did. Ayla had grown used to silence. For 2 years, it had been her shield, her companion, her defense. Now, it was being filled, not by noise, but by presence. Roman never asked personal questions. He didn't dig into her past. He didn't try to pry into the months she vanished or the jobs she worked or the sacrifices she made. Instead, he showed up with things that couldn't be bought. Patience, time, consistency, and somehow that made her see him again. Not the man in the suit, not the boss, not the stranger from her past, but the man her children were beginning to know. She still remembered the night everything changed. The storm, the wine, the kiss, the silence. Back then, she thought it was a mistake. Now, she didn't know what to call it. But it no longer felt like shame. It felt like the start of something unfinished. Roman kept coming. Every Sunday. Sometimes midweek. He helped with bath time once when Zaria had a fever. He stayed late once when Ayla had a migraine. He rocked Micah to sleep on a Tuesday night when she hadn't slept the night before. He didn't complain. He didn't rush. He didn't ask what this meant for them. One night, Ayla sat across from him after the twins fell asleep. They sat on opposite sides of her small couch, 2 empty mugs on the table, the soft hum of an old ceiling fan above them. She looked at him, really looked. Roman had always been handsome, but now he looked tired in a human way. Less polished, more real. "You've changed," she said. He turned slightly. "How?" "You listen now." "I should have listened before." She nodded slowly. He leaned forward. "I'm not perfect," he said. "No one is. I don't want to fix everything. I just want to try." She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, "They deserve that." He exhaled. Not relief, not victory. Something deeper. Because trying, really trying, was harder than succeeding. But he was willing, and for the first time, she believed that. That night, after he left, Ayla stood in the doorway with her hand on the knob, staring into the hallway he'd just walked through. She didn't feel uncertain anymore. She didn't feel scared. She felt still. And that kind of stillness only comes when you know who you are, and what you're willing to allow back into your life. Whatever this became next, she wouldn't run. Not this time. The apartment wasn't quiet anymore. It wasn't loud in the way a busy household is. It was filled with small sounds. Zaria humming to herself while stacking blocks, Micah clicking puzzle pieces together with Sirius. Concentration, the creak of the old rocking chair as Roman slowly moved back and forth, Zaria asleep on his chest. Ayla stood in the kitchen doorway watching them. It had become routine now. Roman coming over on Sundays and sometimes on random weeknights, depending on his travel. He never stayed past bedtime. Never overstepped. He never brought gifts. Only food from local places Ayla hadn't had time to try. Chicken sandwiches one night, warm cornbread from a food truck the next. Tonight, he brought silence. And Ayla didn't mind. She stepped into the room and lowered herself onto the other end of the couch. She glanced at the clock. It was nearing 8:30. "You should go soon," she said softly. Roman nodded but didn't move. "She's out cold," he whispered, glancing down at Zaria's tiny hand curled against his shirt. "She likes your heartbeat," Ayla said, then regretted it. It sounded too intimate. Roman didn't look at her, but she saw his mouth twitch slightly. "Micah did the same thing earlier," he said. "Sat on my lap and just leaned in, like he trusted me. You're earning it." "I want to earn yours too," he said. That made her heart skip. He looked at her now, eyes steady. "I'm not asking for anything," he added. "I just need you to know that I see you, not just as their mother, but as you." Ayla's throat tightened. She looked away first. Zaria shifted against Roman's chest, murmured something in her sleep, then settled again. "I'm still figuring myself out," Ayla said after a moment. "Still recovering from parts of me I didn't know were broken." "You've been doing it alone," he said. "You shouldn't have had to." "I did," she said, "but I'm not bitter about it. I made the decision to leave. I needed space, peace, protection." Roman nodded. "And now?" "I don't know." That was the truth. Roman didn't press. He leaned his head back gently against the couch cushion, eyes on the ceiling. "I think about that night a lot," he said finally. Ayla's breath caught. She knew which night he meant. The storm, the wine, the kiss, the soft touch that shouldn't have happened, but did. "I never intended for it to go that way," he continued. "I didn't know what I needed that night, but I knew I didn't want to be alone. And you were there. You weren't trying to fix me or flatter me. You were just present." Ayla didn't interrupt. Her chest ached in places she thought had hardened. Roman turned his head slightly. "I wasn't fair to you afterward. I disappeared behind silence. And I regret that." Her fingers traced the hem of her sleeve. "I didn't need an apology," she said. "I needed you to see me." "I do now." Zaria stirred, then slowly blinked awake. She looked up at him sleepily, then at Ayla, and reached for her mother. Ayla gently lifted her from Roman's chest. "She'll sleep better in her crib," she whispered. Roman stood slowly and helped tuck the small blanket around her as Ayla cradled the child in her arms. He didn't say anything more. He just grabbed his keys, nodded once, and let himself out. Ayla stood in the hallway a moment after the door closed. Everything inside her felt quiet, not hollow, not afraid, just quiet. The next morning, Roman texted her. "I'll be in Houston Wednesday for a meeting. Can I call after?" Ayla typed slowly. "Only if you're calling to say goodnight to them." "Not to me," Roman replied instantly. "That's all I want." And it was. Later that night, he FaceTimed. Zaria squealed when she saw his face on the screen. Micah pointed at the phone, then shyly hid behind Ayla's arm before peeking out again. Roman didn't rush the call. He asked about their day, made them laugh with silly faces, and ended the call with, "Good night, Zaria." "Good night, Micah. Sweet dreams." Ayla stared at the phone after the screen went dark. Her children were loved, seen, and so was she. The following weekend, Roman asked to take them out for the afternoon. Just the three of them. Ayla hesitated. She wasn't ready to let them go off completely. But they compromised. A trip to the botanical gardens, 30 minutes away. She would join them at the start and meet them at the end. She packed extra wipes, snacks, and emergency contact slips. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she couldn't turn off the part of her that had done everything alone. At the drop-off point, Roman took Micah's hand with gentle confidence and lifted Zaria onto his shoulders. "Call me if anything changes," Ayla said. "I will," he replied. Then he paused. "Thank you for trusting me." She didn't say anything, just gave a small nod and watched them walk away. And for once, she didn't feel like something was being taken from her. She felt like something was returning. That evening, when Roman brought them back, the twins were full of stories. Zaria talked about butterflies. Micah proudly showed her a sticker badge from a scavenger game. Roman waited while Ayla put them down for bed, then stood near the door, hands in his pockets. "I don't know where we go from here," he said softly, "but I'd like to keep showing up." Ayla leaned against the wall, tired but not guarded. "We'll take it slow," she said. He nodded, and left without asking for anything more. That was how healing looked now. Not grand gestures, just honest steps, one day at a time. Roman stood in front of Ayla's apartment door with a plastic bag in one hand and a folded children's book in the other. It was a quiet Thursday evening, the sun still stretching over the rooftops in gold slants. He knocked twice. Ayla opened the door with a towel over her shoulder and a half-braided section of Zaria's hair in her hand. The little girl peeked out from behind her leg and squealed when she saw him. "You're early," Ayla said, raising an eyebrow. "You said 6. It's 5:53. She let out a soft laugh and stepped aside to let him in. Zaria reached for him immediately. Micah, seated at the dining table, looked up from his toy car, but didn't rush over. He gave a small nod instead, a gesture that had become his own version of hello. Roman handed Ayla the bag. "I brought their favorite, roasted sweet potatoes and grilled chicken. From that spot near the center, you remembered? I pay attention now." Ayla turned toward the kitchen to warm the food. Roman dropped to the floor with the kids, helping Zaria fix a missing wheel on a plastic stroller while Micah slowly rolled his car across the rug with quiet concentration. 15 minutes later, they sat down to eat, with Ayla cutting Micah's food into small squares and Roman helping Zaria hold her cup. There was no big conversation, just the clatter of spoons and sippy cups. But it felt right. After dinner, Ayla set up a small activity mat and pulled out a matching game. Roman watched her carefully place the tiles, explaining the rules to the twins with the patience of someone who had done it 100 times. "You ever play this before?" she asked him. "No. You're about to lose." She smirked. He smiled. And lost. On purpose the first time. Then, genuinely, the second. Zaria giggled every time she turned the wrong tile. Micah frowned when he missed a match but clapped for his sister anyway. Roman leaned back on his hands and looked at Ayla. "You're good at this." She raised a brow. "At matching games?" "At raising people." She paused. Her fingers froze above a tile. "You don't know what I gave up to get here." "I know I'm late," Roman said, "but I'm trying to catch up the right way." That stayed with her all night. After the kids went to bed, Roman helped clean the dishes while Ayla wiped down the counters. They moved around each other easily, without needing to speak much. As she rinsed the last plate, Roman leaned against the fridge. I was offered a project in Chicago. Hotel chain expansion, 6-month build. She dried her hands. Are you taking it? I said no. She looked at him, surprised. You don't say no to projects. I do now. She folded the dish towel neatly. Why? He didn't hesitate. Because I want to be here. With them, with you, wherever you'll let me fit. Ayla didn't answer right away. Her eyes dropped to the counter. You don't need to anchor your life to me because of guilt. This isn't guilt. Then what is it? Intention. The word hung in the space between them like a breath. Roman stepped closer. Let me walk beside you. Not ahead, not behind, just next to you. Her eyes lifted, searching him. You're still learning, she said. So are you. She gave a small nod. He leaned in slightly, not close enough to touch her, just close enough for her to hear the truth in his voice. I'm not rushing you. I'm just staying. And then, as if he knew she needed time to think, he stepped back, grabbed his keys, and left with the softest click of the door. That weekend, Roman surprised the kids with something simple, a cardboard box turned into a painted playhouse. He'd cut out windows, colored stars on the walls, and glued paper flowers on the roof. Micah peeked inside first. Zaria climbed through the makeshift door and shouted, "Welcome home." Roman laughed and sat on the floor beside them. Ayla watched from the couch, arms crossed, lips twitching into a quiet smile. He was trying, not with money, not with status, just time, effort, and humility. It mattered. That night, after the kids were asleep and the apartment dimmed to a calm hum, Ayla stepped onto the fire escape. Roman joined her a few minutes later, carrying 2 mugs of warm tea. He handed her one and leaned against the railing beside her. The city stretched out below them, soft and breathing. I used to think love was a deal, he said suddenly. Give some, get some, keep score. And now? I think it's just showing up. Even when you're scared. She didn't respond, not because she disagreed, but because part of her had spent so long doing the same thing, showing up, alone. She looked at him. Do you think you're ready for more than weekends and game nights? Yes. She nodded. Then we'll start there. His eyes searched hers. And what about us? Ayla sipped her tea, steady. One day at a time. Roman smiled, because for the first time, she hadn't said no. And sometimes, that's more than enough. The weeks that followed felt like rhythm. Not routine, because nothing with toddlers ever stayed predictable. But rhythm, a natural, steady beat that gave Ayla space to breathe and Roman room to grow. He came over every Tuesday after work and every Saturday morning. Some weeks, he'd call between meetings just to hear Zaria's babble or Micah's single-word updates about trucks and apples. He didn't just play the part of a father, he became one diaper at a time, one storybook at a time, one sleepless teething night at a time. Roman started keeping an extra set of clothes in a drawer at Ayla's place, not because he stayed over, but because he helped clean, feed, hold, soothe, and those things didn't care if your shirt was designer. One evening, after Micah fell asleep on his chest, Roman stayed longer than usual. Ayla didn't rush him out. She didn't offer explanations or warnings. She simply sat beside him, her body close enough that their shoulders touched. It was the first time in a long while she didn't feel the need to protect herself from him. He looked over at her, eyes tired but soft. This is the happiest I've ever been. She didn't say anything. He didn't need her to. He reached for her hand, slowly, gently, and she let him hold it. That was the moment. No grand speeches, no romantic pressure, just 2 people who had built something real, brick by brick, day by day. And for the first time, there were no walls between them. A few days later, Ayla got a call from the childcare center she'd been waitlisted on for months. Good news, the voice chirped. We have space for both children. Full time. Ayla's stomach flipped. She'd been praying for this. But now that it had arrived, a strange sadness came with it. She looked at the twins, Micah tracing the edge of a cardboard book, Zaria humming to herself beside the laundry basket, and wondered how she'd function without their voices in the background all day. That night, she told Roman. They got in. His eyes lit up. That's amazing. You'll have time to rest. Maybe even work again if you want. She nodded. That's the plan. You okay? I think so. He reached across the table and rested his hand on hers. Just because things change doesn't mean you lose them. She looked up. I know. And she did. But knowing didn't stop the ache. The day she dropped the twins off, Roman came with her. They walked through the cheerful building with walls covered in finger paint and alphabet charts. The twins clung to Ayla's legs at first, then slowly wandered off, toward the toys and the kind woman with gentle eyes and soft hands. Roman crouched beside Micah. We'll be back later, okay? Micah nodded once. Zaria kissed Ayla's cheek, then blew one to Roman. Ayla stood at the doorway for a full minute after the kids were out of sight. You did it, Roman said softly. No. We did. She didn't realize she'd said we until after the words left her mouth. Roman didn't react. He didn't need to. That one word, we, meant more than any confession. Later that evening, Roman offered to cook dinner. Ayla laughed. You cook? Don't insult me. I made microwave lasagna in college. Real gourmet. She rolled her eyes. That's not cooking. I've leveled up since then. He ordered from a soul food place instead. When it arrived, they sat on the floor with plates balanced on their knees, watching an old movie with the sound low and the windows open. It was simple, it was soft, and it felt like a beginning. After they cleared the plates, Roman turned to her. I've been thinking, he said, about us, this, the kids, everything. Ayla waited. I don't need a contract to be here. I don't need a title. I just need to know I'm wanted. She set her cup down. You are. I want you to feel safe with me, he added. Not because we have a label. Because I've earned it. You are, she said again. Roman leaned forward, kissed her forehead, and sat back. No rush. No pressure. Just presence. And for the first time since that stormy night years ago, Ayla didn't feel like she owed anyone silence. She felt seen, and seen was enough. 3 days later, she woke to find Roman in the living room with both kids asleep on his chest. The morning light came through the windows softly. He was in the same clothes as last night. He must have fallen asleep during story time. She stood in the hallway for a while, just watching. She hadn't planned this life, but she wouldn't trade it. Not now. Not ever. Because sometimes, what starts in silence becomes the loudest kind of love. He was never supposed to be a father. She never planned to see him again. But now, they've built a bond no contract could ever offer. Have you ever trusted someone slowly, after years of carrying everything alone? Have you ever let your walls down piece by piece? This isn't about romance, it's about presence, about what happens when someone finally shows up and doesn't walk away. Would you give someone a second chance, not with their words, but their consistency? Share your thoughts in the comments. Like if you believe real love is earned. Subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories. You won't want to miss how their story unfolds. The evening air in Dallas had started to cool. Summer was slowly giving way to softer breezes, and the sun no longer hung high into the night. On a quiet Thursday, Ayla stood by her window, arms folded, watching the sky change color behind the rooftops. Roman was late, not unusually so, but it wasn't like him. He always texted when work held him back or traffic got thick. She checked her phone. Nothing. Micah was on the floor arranging blocks by color. Zaria had fallen asleep early after skipping her nap at daycare. The house was calm, but Ayla's chest wasn't. She didn't realize how much she'd begun to rely on him until the rhythm changed. By 7:40, she was about to call him when a knock came at the door. She opened it slowly. Roman stood there, not in a suit, not in a rush, just quiet, his eyes tired and voice low. Sorry, lost track of time at the sight. She stepped aside to let him in. "Everything okay?" He nodded. "Long day." She watched him take off his shoes and lower himself to the rug beside Micah. The boy lit up when he saw him. Roman opened his arms, and Micah crawled into his lap without hesitation. No words. Just that calm, certain connection that had taken months to build. Ayla sat down across from them, letting her breath even out. Roman looked up. "Dinner?" "Still warm." "I'll plate it." He didn't argue, didn't pretend he wasn't exhausted. When she returned with food, he thanked her quietly and ate without the usual small talk. She didn't push. She knew his silences by now. But something about tonight felt heavier. When the twins were tucked in and the lights turned low, Ayla stepped back into the living room where Roman still sat on the couch, head tilted back against the cushion. "You don't look like yourself," she said softly. He didn't open his eyes. "I had to walk away from a deal today." "Why?" "Because the investor made a comment about my time being split. Said I was slipping since I started coming here more." Ayla froze. Roman opened his eyes now, focused on her. He wasn't wrong. "I have pulled back." Her shoulders tensed. Roman sat up straighter. "But I'd do it again." Ayla lowered herself onto the armrest. "Roman, I'm not saying that for points," he interrupted. "I'm saying it because I finally know what's worth showing up for." She studied him. The man she had met years ago wouldn't have admitted something like that. The man who stood in front of her now had dirt under his fingernails from pushing Micah's stroller through the park. He had laugh lines starting to form from Zaria's endless games. He was tired, worn, human, and she found herself leaning closer to that version of him. Roman turned toward her. "I want to ask you something." "Go ahead." "What's holding you back?" Ayla's heart pounded once. Hard. He didn't ask it in a demanding way. There was no pressure in his tone. Just curiosity, maybe even hope. She took a breath. "I'm still healing." He nodded. "From me. From the fear of repeating my past. From doing it all alone again." "I won't let that happen." "You didn't say that before," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't know how to." She looked away. "I trusted you once," she said. "I remember. It cost me everything." He leaned in slowly, not touching her, but close enough for her to feel his presence like warmth. "Let me try again. Not with promises, not with pressure, just with time." Ayla blinked. Her throat tightened. "I'm not good at needing people," she whispered. "I'm not asking you to need me. I'm asking you to let me be here anyway." She didn't respond, but she didn't move away either. Roman reached out and gently touched her hand, fingers brushing against hers with the same careful energy he used when reading to the twins. This time, she turned her palm upward and laced their fingers together. They sat like that in silence for a long time. Ayla broke it first. "You're still in love with control." "I'm learning how to love without it." Her lips curved into a soft, quiet smile. Roman reached up with his other hand and touched her cheek. Slow, hesitant, honest. She closed her eyes. And for the first time in nearly 3 years, she let someone hold her without defense. Roman didn't kiss her. He didn't rush anything. He just held her face and rested his forehead against hers. And it was enough. It was more than enough. Because love didn't need to be loud to be real. Sometimes, it just needed to stay. For the next few days, Ayla carried a quiet stillness inside her. It wasn't fear. It wasn't confusion. It was peace. The kind of peace that doesn't come from certainty, but from finally trusting. The ground beneath your feet, even if you're not sure where the path leads. Roman didn't bring up what happened between them. Not the closeness, not the touch, not the way she let him hold her face and sit forehead to forehead, breathing in sync like they weren't two people trying to fix what broke, but two people starting something honest. Instead, he came over and helped with the twins like always. He let Zaria paint his hands with applesauce and watched Micah line up 4 toy cars in perfect symmetry. He changed diapers, picked up groceries, cleaned dishes without being asked. But something had shifted, and they both knew it. One evening, as the twins napped, Roman sat on the floor near the window, flipping through one of Micah's books. Isla brought over a small tray with tea for her and black coffee for him. No sugar, just how he liked it. He looked up and smiled. "You always remember. You're not hard to remember." She sat down beside him, her knee brushing his. For a while they sipped their drinks in silence, the quiet kind that doesn't need filling. Then Roman asked, "Do you miss who you were before them?" Isla thought about it. "No," she said after a moment. "I think I became who I was meant to be when they came." He nodded, fingers tapping his cup. I think I stopped being who I thought I was supposed to be," he said, "and started becoming someone they could depend on." Isla set her mug down and turned slightly. "They don't just depend on you," she said. "They light up when you walk in. They feel safe." Roman looked over at her. "I want that to be true for you too." She didn't look away. "It's getting there." He reached over slowly and touched her hand again. Not claiming, just connecting. Isla didn't pull away. "You've been patient," she said. "I wasn't always. You are now. That's because I know what I stand to lose if I'm not." That made her heart tighten, not from pain but from truth. She nodded once, then whispered, "Do you want to stay for dinner?" Roman's eyes searched hers. "Just dinner?" A hint of a smile touched her lips. "Don't push it." He smiled back. "I'll set the table." That evening, they ate a simple meal: spaghetti, steamed vegetables, and warm bread. The twins clapped when Ayla sprinkled cheese over their bowls, and Roman helped Zaria tuck a napkin into her shirt collar. They laughed, talked, let go, and for the first time in a long time, it felt like a family. Not forced, not fake, just right. After dinner, Ayla played soft music while Roman held Micah in his lap, bouncing him gently as Zaria danced in circles. Ayla watched from the kitchen, arms crossed, face relaxed. This was her life. This was her peace. And Roman? He was no longer on the outside looking in. He was in it, with her. Later that night, after the twins had been tucked in and the last toy put away, Roman stood near the door with his shoes in his hand. Ayla leaned against the wall, watching him quietly. He turned. "Do you want me to go?" She hesitated, then slowly shook her head. "Stay." Roman set his shoes down gently. She led him to the couch, pulled over the spare blanket from the chair, and handed it to him. He sat, nodding. "Just the couch? For now." He smiled, settling in. Ayla turned off the light, but before she walked toward the bedroom, she paused. "I used to sleep in fear," she said, "that someone would leave or take too much." Roman looked at her in the dark. "I'm not here to take." "I know," she said. "That's why I let you stay." Then she walked down the hall, her heart pounding, not with panic, but with something warmer. Hope. She had opened her first door, and this time, she wasn't scared of who stood on the other side. Ayla woke up to the soft sounds of birds outside her window and the hum of life starting inside her tiny apartment. The scent of warm toast drifted from the kitchen. Micah's soft voice sang a tune only he understood, and Zaria's feet pitter-pattered as she jumped on the couch cushions. Then she heard something unfamiliar in this space she'd fought hard to build alone. A low male voice, steady, gentle. Roman was here, and not just physically, he was here. She rubbed her eyes, stepped into the hallway, and froze. Roman stood in the kitchen, wearing a plain t-shirt, barefoot, flipping pancakes while holding Zaria on his hip. Micah sat on the counter nearby, giggling at Roman's goofy faces between flips. "Morning," he said when he noticed her. His voice was light, but there was something real in it. No act, no charm, just a man trying. She nodded, arms folded loosely. "Morning." Zaria reached out. "Mommy, he made funny eggs." "They're scrambled, baby." "No, they're funny." "Look." Ayla smiled as Roman winked over the girl's curls. "I didn't know they made you this domestic," she said, walking to grab a cup of water. "Turns out they make me do a lot I never expected," Roman replied. She sat at the kitchen table, watching the scene. For 2 years, she'd imagined every version of Roman Vance, angry, distant, apologetic, indifferent. But she never pictured this, him humming while cooking for their kids, wiping syrup off Micah's cheek, using child-sized plates without being asked. And somehow, she wasn't afraid, not of him, not of what they were becoming. The fear was slowly being replaced by presence. They ate together, all 4 of them. Crumbs scattered, juice spilled. Zaria refused to wear pants. Normal. Beautiful. Later, while the kids colored at the coffee table, Ayla and Roman sat near the window again. The same spot where truth had started days before. She looked at him. "You're not here to prove something, are you?" Roman shook his head. "I'm not trying to earn points. I just want to be part of their life, and maybe yours, even if there's no promise." He leaned forward. "Ayla, I don't want a transaction. I want truth, even if it's slow, even if it takes years." She didn't speak right away. Then, "I don't want the twins confused. I need them safe." Roman nodded. "Then let's build something they can feel safe in. You, me, and them, however it takes." He reached over and touched her hand. She let it linger. That afternoon, Roman offered to take the twins to the park alone. Ayla raised an eyebrow. "Alone? Alone?" "I won't lose them," he joked. She looked skeptical. "They get cranky fast. Zaria cries if her shoes are too tight. I'll take notes. And Micah, I'll call you every 10 minutes if needed." He leaned down, meeting her eyes. "I've handled boardrooms, senators, screaming shareholders. I can handle 2 toddlers." She sighed, finally smiled. "Fine, but if they come back sticky, I'll never let you take them again." He grinned, scooped Zaria into one arm, and Micah into the other. "Let's go, team." Ayla watched from the door, arms crossed. It felt strange to watch them walk away. Strange, and right. The apartment was quiet for the first time in weeks. Ayla looked around and exhaled. She cleaned a little, not because she had to, because it was comforting. Then she sat in the corner, letting the stillness wash over her. She didn't nap. She didn't cry. She just existed. And that, for her, was progress. When the door opened an hour later, Zaria came bouncing in holding a balloon animal. Micah held a tiny dinosaur toy. "We got chicken," Micah announced. Roman followed behind, holding a paper bag. "They were angels," he said, setting the food down. "A little sticky, but alive." Ayla smiled. "Good. I still get to keep my silence." They all sat to eat again, and Ayla felt it fully now. This rhythm, a pulse of stability, of maybe. Later that night, Roman stood by the door. She knew he was waiting for her to decide. Stay or go. And she didn't make him wait long. She walked over and said, "You can stay." Then she pointed toward the twins' room. Micah asked if you could do bedtime. Roman smiled gently. "You sure?" She nodded. He tucked them in, read from their favorite book, kissed both foreheads, and when he walked out, he didn't try to kiss Ayla. He didn't assume. He just sat on the couch again. Ayla brought him a blanket, but instead of walking away, she sat beside him. She pulled her knees up, wrapped in a sweater. "I didn't think I'd ever trust a man again," she said softly. "I didn't think I'd deserve the chance." Silence. Then, "You're earning it," she said. He reached over, brushing her hand lightly, and this time, she didn't pull away. Not even a little. Roman started coming by every day. Some mornings, he showed up with fresh bagels and coloring books. Other times, he simply knocked with a smile, and his sleeves rolled up, ready to take Micah to the park or help Zaria learn how to tie her shoes. He didn't ask to stay the night. He didn't cross boundaries, but he didn't leave either. Ayla watched closely, measured his every move. At first, she wondered if it was guilt driving him. But guilt fades. What Roman brought every day was consistency. Steady, calm, real. That was new. It disarmed her. One morning, Ayla woke up to the scent of cinnamon. Roman was in the kitchen again, hair a mess, wearing an apron Micah made at daycare. It said Superdad in crooked glitter letters. He didn't notice her at first. He was humming. Ayla leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, quietly amused. "You're getting comfortable." Roman turned, startled. "Good morning. Is that my last cinnamon stick?" He looked guilty. I panicked. Micah said Zaria would cry if it wasn't the swirly one. I wasn't about to test that theory. She walked in, poured coffee, and sat at the table. Zaria ran out of the bedroom in mismatched socks, and Micah trailed behind holding a toy shark. "Roman, we forgot the syrup," Zaria whined. "Operation Syrup is underway," he said, grabbing it from the counter. He placed it dramatically on the table like it was treasure. The kids cheered. Ayla laughed quietly. Roman glanced at her, his eyes lingering. Soft, intentional, not lust, not pity, warmth. And it made her chest tighten. She wasn't used to being looked at like that, like she was more than her past. Later, Roman helped clean the dishes while Ayla did Zaria's hair. He watched her work, gentle, patient, precise with each braid. "You ever thought of opening a salon?" he asked. Ayla looked up, amused. "You think this looks professional?" "It looks like care," he said. "The real kind." She didn't reply, but her smile lingered. Roman leaned against the counter. "I have a proposal." She raised a brow. "Another one?" He chuckled. "Not a marriage one. Good. You don't get two." He folded his arms. "I want to invest in you." Ayla frowned. "In me?" "I've seen the way you work with those community kids at the park, the way other moms look at you for help. You're already a leader." "Roman, start a daycare or a non-profit or a kids center, whatever you want. I'll back it, but you'll run it. You'll build it." She stared at him. "Why?" "Because you don't even realize how much light you give." Her eyes welled, but she blinked fast. "You think money fixes everything?" "No, but it can lift the weight enough for you to breathe, for others to breathe." She stayed quiet. But later that night she Googled how to start a community child center. Days passed, then weeks. One Sunday, Roman took them to the Children's Museum. He wore a hoodie, no bodyguards, no phone, just a man holding a little girl's coat while pretending to be eaten by a plastic dinosaur for Micah's laughter. They took pictures. One of them, the four of them, huddled close, stayed on Ayla's phone screen. She didn't change it. Not anymore. Then came the question Micah asked one night while brushing his teeth. "Is Mr. Rowe my daddy?" Ayla froze. He was brushing like it was nothing. Zaria was singing beside him. She knelt slowly. "Yes, baby. He is." Micah nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Okay. He's fun." Zaria giggled. "He calls me Banana Pants." Ayla laughed, heart tight. Children didn't complicate things the way adults did. They accepted love wherever it was planted. Later that night, after the twins fell asleep, Roman stood by the window again. Ayla handed him a glass of water. "You heard him?" Roman nodded. "I didn't expect it. I've been wondering when they'd ask. Thank you for not hiding it. You earned the truth," she said. He looked at her then, his eyes full of something she couldn't describe. "You scare me," he said. That startled her. "Why?" "Because you make me want things I thought I didn't deserve." She stepped closer. "You're not the only one scared." "I know." He reached for her hand. She didn't pull back. They started spending weekends together. Family markets, bookstores, quiet dinners at home. The world didn't know. There were no headlines, but they were building something. Roman read parenting books. He installed a car seat himself. He started learning how to braid Zaria's hair. He even showed up to Micah's preschool orientation, dressed in jeans, nervously introducing himself as Roe, Micah's dad. Ayla stood in the corner, watching the teacher smile warmly and nod. She'd never imagined this version of him, but he was becoming it. For them. One evening, Roman sat across from Ayla after dinner. The kids had gone to sleep early, and the apartment was wrapped in a soft stillness. "I bought land," he said. Her head snapped up. "What?" "In Dallas." Not big. Just enough to build a small center. Ayla's mouth parted. You were serious? I meant every word. But only if you want to. She stared at him, then nodded slowly. I do. He smiled. Then we start tomorrow. The next morning, they visited the land. Flat, untouched, waiting. Zaria ran in circles. Micah collected rocks. Roman stood beside Ayla. What should we name it? He asked. She looked out at the sun rising over the field. Grace Garden. He turned to her. That's perfect. Because that's what saved me, she said quietly. Grace. He didn't say anything, just wrapped an arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. They stood like that for a long time. No need for more words. It was bound to happen. Roman knew it. He just didn't expect the storm to hit during a pancake breakfast with Zaria drawing hearts on his arm in syrup. His phone buzzed. He ignored it. Buzzed again. Then again. He checked. 3 texts from his assistant, 1 from his head of PR, and a 4th from a journalist he hadn't spoken to in years. Subject line, your secret twins. Leaked footage. Roman went cold. Across the table, Ayla was tying Zaria's curls with a pink scrunchie. Micah was humming. He locked his screen and stood. Everything okay? Ayla asked. He nodded slowly, but the color in his face drained. I need to make a call. He stepped out. By the time he returned, his expression had changed. Hard lines on his face. Ayla noticed. Roman. They got pictures. From the museum trip, me with Micah, with Zaria. They're spinning it. Spinning how? That I had secret kids. That I hid them. That you were... He stopped. Say it, she said quietly. That you were a paid woman I knocked up and abandoned. Her jaw clenched. Roman threw his phone across the couch. I'll shut it down. Every paper. Every site. I swear it. Ayla folded her arms. Why does this keep happening? Why does the world only see what fits their narrative? Roman sat heavily. Because truth is quiet, and scandal is loud. She looked at him. Tired, disappointed, scared. Not for herself. For her children. They're going to see this, Roman. Maybe not today. But one day. He stood. Then we change the story now. How? We speak. That night, Roman's publicist called again. They're holding back worse headlines, unless we release a statement. Roman replied calmly, schedule an interview. A live one. No scripts. The woman on the other end froze. Roman. No edits. No filters. I'll tell the truth. Start to finish. The call ended in silence. Ayla sat beside him, silent for a long beat. You sure? He nodded. The world doesn't get to define us. The interview aired 2 days later. Ayla watched from their apartment with the twins asleep in the next room. Roman wore no suit, just a simple button-up, open collar, no watch, no flash, just him, a man telling his story. He admitted everything. The night he met Ayla, the shame of not stepping up when he should have, the realization that love wasn't always loud, but it was always real. I didn't find a housemaid, he said on camera. I found a woman who carried the weight of 2 children without a single complaint. A woman who taught me what love is supposed to feel like, who never asked for my money, my status, or my name. She just wanted peace, and now I want that too. With her, with our children, fully, publicly. The reporter asked gently, why now? Roman paused. Because silence has cost her enough. The interview went viral. Some people mocked it. Others cried. But most listened. The comments flooded in. She's stronger than any woman I've seen on screen. Where do I find a man who admits his failure and changes? This is love that looks like healing. Ayla didn't say much. She just stared at the screen and held her twins tighter that night. The next morning, reporters gathered outside their complex. Micah pressed his face against the window. Are they here for us? Ayla gently pulled him back. They're noisy. That's all. Roman arrived an hour later with 3 security personnel and dark sunglasses. He took Ayla's hand. "Come with me." "To where?" He bent and whispered something in Zaria's ear. She squealed. "We're getting cake?" Roman winked. "Not just cake. A fresh start." He took them to a private resort out of town. No paparazzi, no headlines, just beach, trees, and quiet. That night, after the twins fell asleep in their new room, Ayla stood on the balcony watching the tide roll in. Roman joined her with 2 mugs of cocoa. He handed her one. They stood silently for a while. Then she spoke. "I saw the whole interview. I figured—" "Did you mean all of it?" He turned fully toward her. "Every word." She sipped. "Then prove it." He blinked. "How?" Ayla turned to face him. "Tell me your real fears. Not the rehearsed ones, the ones that keep you up." Roman leaned on the rail. "My fear is that I waited too long, that I lost too many chances, that one day the kids might resent me for the years I wasn't there." Ayla listened, eyes steady. "And that maybe," he added softly, "you'll wake up and realize I'm not enough for you." Her eyes softened. "I already did." He flinched. "But then you changed," she whispered. "And now I know better." She placed her cup down and stepped close. "I don't need a perfect man, Roman. I need a present one." "I'm here," he whispered. "I know." That night, for the first time in years, Ayla let herself sleep in someone's arms again. Not because she was desperate, not because she was lonely, but because she was safe. The next morning felt different. Zaria woke first. She climbed into bed with her mother and Roman, whispering, "I like this bed, and this house, and this daddy." Ayla smiled, eyes half closed. Roman blinked awake beside her, smiling. "You called me daddy." Zaria giggled. "That's what Micah said you are." Roman sat up. "He did?" Zaria nodded and leaned in. "He said you love us, even though you didn't know us first." Roman swallowed hard. "He's right." Ayla sat up too, brushing Zaria's hair. "They're watching you. Every move." "I want them to see the right one," Roman said. Over breakfast, Roman scrolled through the latest articles. Some media outlets tried to spin the narrative. Billionaire softens for former housemaid. Others praised Ayla. Single mom of twins chose dignity over dollars. But something was clear. Public perception was shifting. Roman tossed his phone down. "People will always talk." Ayla sipped her tea. "Let them. We've got better things to do." Micah ran into the room with a toy plane. "We're flying today?" Roman looked to Ayla. She nodded. "Let's show them something new." He flew them back to Houston that weekend, but not to the mansion. He took them to a new place, a modern house tucked away in a gated neighborhood. Nothing too flashy, but with enough space for Zaria to have a garden and Micah to build forts. "This is ours?" Micah asked, wide-eyed. Roman knelt. "If your mama says yes." Ayla's eyes met his. "You're not buying my trust." "I know. I'm offering you presents. Permanence." She looked around, sunlight spilling through the large windows, a warm kitchen that smelled like fresh wood and lemon, and a room that already had 2 twin beds decorated with space and fairy themes. "You built this for them." "For you," Roman said. "They just come with the package." Her breath caught. "Roman. I had all the wrong things before. Too many houses. Not enough home." By evening, the kids were running through the hallway barefoot, shouting names for their rooms. Ayla stood at the back door, watching the backyard light up with soft fairy lights Roman had installed. He walked out, holding a photo frame. "I had this made." She turned. Inside the frame, a drawing Zaria made of their family, holding hands under a blue sky. Above them, written in crayon, "Love lives here." Ayla's hand flew to her chest. "I know I can't rewrite the past," Roman said quietly, "but I can build every tomorrow with you." She stepped closer. "One day at a time." He nodded. "Then let's start with today." That night, they cooked together. Roman burned the chicken. Ayla teased him. Micah asked him to read a bedtime story. Zaria insisted on brushing Roman's hair, which ended in tiny butterfly clips across his head. He didn't flinch, just sat there, grinning. And when the kids finally slept, Isla came to find him sitting on the couch, head back, arms resting wide. "You survived," she joked. "I was clipped, stickered, tackled, and I've never felt better." She sat beside him, curling her legs under her. "I used to dream about this." "Did you?" "Not the billionaire part," she said, amused. "Just the family part." He turned to face her. "It's not too late to have that." She rested her head on his shoulder. "It's not too late at all." Days turned into weeks. Roman's schedule shifted. Instead of endless flights and boardroom meetings, he started Zooming. From the home office, while Zaria played on the rug beside him, Micah helped file sticky notes into the trash, proudly calling himself mini assistant. Roman loved every minute. He still made deals, still ran an empire. But every day ended with hugs, little feet, and laughter bouncing through hallways that were once empty. One afternoon, a letter arrived from Roman's estranged mother. He sat with it for hours before telling Ayla. "She wants to meet the kids." Ayla stayed quiet. "She's still in Florida. Says she's sorry. Are you ready for that?" Ayla asked. Roman looked unsure. "I don't know. But maybe the kids deserve a chance to meet their grandmother. Then go slow. For them, not for her." He nodded. 2 weeks later, they flew to Florida. The meeting was tense at first. Roman's mother, now grey-haired and softer in tone, watched Zaria play. With seashells and Micah, ask endless questions about airplanes. She whispered to Roman, "They're beautiful." "They're not just beautiful," he said. "They're everything." Ayla didn't speak much. She stood back, protective but composed. When Roman's mother tried to hold Zaria's hand, the little girl leaned in. "She's gentle," Zaria told her brother. "I like gentle." Micah shrugged. "We'll see." Roman smiled. His children were cautious but open, much like their mother. Back home, the twins began school. Ayla walked them into class hand in hand. Roman waited outside, nervous. "They'll be fine," she said. He laughed. "They're 5. I'm 34. And I'm sweating." She kissed his cheek. "You're doing great." He took a deep breath. And just before she walked back in, he grabbed her hand. "What if we made it official?" She looked at him. "You mean marriage?" He nodded. "The real kind. No pressure, no obligation. Just love." Ayla smiled. "Then we do it our way." They married in their backyard. Just family. Just peace. Zaria wore flowers in her hair. Micah gave a speech. "He used to be Mr. Rowe. Now he's our dad, and he loves our mom. So he's staying." Laughter. Tears. And one promise made in quiet confidence. Roman whispered to Ayla, "You changed everything, without asking for anything." And she whispered back, "You gave me what I never thought I'd deserve. A home. With love." The papers were still in the drawer, folded neatly, untouched. Ayla found them while organizing Roman's office. The original contract, the one she signed months ago in a flurry of desperation and confusion. A deal to pretend, to survive, to protect her children. Now it felt like a relic from another life. She held the paper and stared at her signature. Her hand had trembled that day. Roman walked in, holding 2 mugs. He paused when he saw the document in her hand. "I forgot those were still there," he said softly. She looked up. "I didn't." Roman set the mugs down and walked closer. "Do they still matter to you?" She folded the paper, this time with steady fingers. "No, they mattered then. They kept me safe. But now you don't need them," he finished. "I don't want anything between us to be from fear." Roman took the paper from her gently, walked to the fireplace and dropped it in. The flames curled it into nothing. "No more paper," he said. "Just love." They didn't need a grand celebration. They'd already had one wedding, with flowers, guests and vows whispered before the stars. But that night, sitting side by side on the porch swing, Roman turned to her again. "Will you marry me again?" Ayla blinked. "We're already married. I mean, with no contract, No deals, no pretending. Isla leaned against him. "Is this the proposal?" He grinned. "It's the real one." She nodded. "Then yes. Yes, I'll marry you again." Roman kissed her slowly. This kiss didn't hold urgency. It held truth. They made the new vows in a courthouse. Just the four of them. Micah wore suspenders and clutched a Lego man in one hand. Zaria twirled in a pink dress, humming a tune of her own. When the judge asked, "Do you take her?" Roman answered, "Every day." And when he turned to Ayla, she said, "I already have." Zaria whispered loudly, "Mama's gonna cry." Ayla did. Micah clapped. "We're all married now." Back home, Ayla set a new rule. "No more maids. I want to raise our kids with our own hands." Roman nodded. "You've raised them long before I even knew them, but now they need both of us." He agreed. Always. They turned their mansion into a home, not by buying more things, but by being there, at dinners, story times, bedtime prayers. Roman stepped back from the spotlight. He let his brother handle more press, more deals, more boardroom noise. He stayed home to be Roman, the husband, the father, not Mr. Langford, the billionaire. Months passed. Micah built model airplanes with Roman every Saturday. Zaria helped Ayla bake cupcakes for the school fair. At night, Ayla would tuck them in while Roman watched from the doorway. One night, Micah asked, "Dad, when did you start loving Mom?" Roman smiled. "The day I realized her strength was louder than my money." Zaria chimed in. "That's why you give her flowers every Friday." "Exactly," he said. Ayla stood in the hallway, heart full. One quiet Sunday morning, Ayla took a pregnancy test. She hadn't been sick, just tired, a little more emotional. Roman noticed the shift before she even said a word. "You've been sleeping more," he observed, "and craving pickles." She smiled nervously. "I think I'm pregnant." His eyes widened. "Are you sure?" She held up the test. He stared at it, then at her. Then he fell to his knees and kissed her belly, whispering, "Thank you." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "For what?" "For giving me a life I never knew I needed." At their first appointment, the doctor smiled warmly. "You're about 9 weeks." Roman asked, "Can we hear the heartbeat?" The sound filled the room, quick, steady, strong. He squeezed Ayla's hand. "That's us." All over again. They walked out of the clinic into the sunshine. No photographers, no headlines, just them. "I don't want the world to know yet," Ayla said. "They won't," Roman promised. This is sacred." Weeks turned into months. Roman started writing a journal for the baby. Every night, he'd sit in the nursery, jotting down thoughts. "Dear little one, you haven't met us yet, but you've already changed our world." Ayla found the journal one night and read quietly, page after page of hopes, fears, love. She added her own line, "We're waiting with open arms and full hearts." The twins were ecstatic when they learned. Micah declared himself Big Brother protector. Zaria promised to share all her toys, except the glitter ones. They talked to Ayla's belly every morning and night. "Good night, Jellybean," Micah would whisper. "Sweet dreams, Sparkleheart," Zaria added. Roman joined in. "Sleep tight, little Langford." They didn't need the world's approval. They had something richer. Time, love, second chances. The Langfords weren't perfect, but they were whole. And when Roman kissed Ayla's growing belly one night and whispered, "No more paper, just love," she smiled and said, "Forever." Ayla walked slowly through the nursery in soft slippers, hands on her belly. The pale green walls, the wooden crib, the sunlight spilling in, it all felt like hope. She never thought she'd have this. Not peace, not love, and certainly not the man who once saw her as invisible. Roman stood behind her, leaning against the doorframe. "You've changed this house." She turned. "No, we changed each other." They'd both grown. He wasn't just a powerful CEO anymore. He was a dad who knew the names of his daughter's dolls and made pancake faces on Sunday mornings. She wasn't just a quiet housemaid anymore. She was the heartbeat of a home. Roman walked to her, resting his hand on her belly. Girl or boy, this child will know nothing but love. She reached up, touching his face. Then let's start by giving them a world without fear. They hosted a backyard barbecue with just close friends and family. No press, no investors, no suits. Roman grilled. Isla made lemonade. The twins ran barefoot across the grass, chasing bubbles. People who once doubted their relationship now stood in line to hold her hand, to ask her how she managed to tame the man once known as the Ice King of Houston. Isla just smiled. I didn't tame him. I let him feel. And Roman? He laughed more that day than in his entire adult life. Not forced laughs for business deals, real ones, belly deep, loud, free. Weeks later, the night before Ayla's due date, a thunderstorm rolled in. The house was quiet. The twins were asleep. Roman lit candles just in case the power went out. Ayla winced slightly and grabbed the armrest of the couch. He turned quickly. Was that? She nodded. Contraction. They'd planned everything. Hospital bag, car route, a playlist of soft gospel songs, but life didn't care about plans. By the second contraction, her breathing grew shallow. Let's go, Roman said, grabbing her coat. No, she panted. Wait. Too close together. He froze. You mean here? Ayla gripped his hand hard. Call the midwife. Roman's heart pounded louder than the thunder. He called. He paced. He boiled water like movies told him to. And when the midwife arrived, he helped. Not with money, but with sweat. Holding Ayla's hand, wiping her forehead, whispering, You're stronger than anyone I've ever known. At 3:19 a.m., their daughter, Eden Grace Langford, was born. She had Ayla's eyes and Roman's dimple, and when she let out her first cry, the storm outside quieted. Roman held her gently. I missed Micah and Zaria's birth. But not this time. Isla, exhausted and glowing, reached up to stroke his cheek. You're here. That's what matters. He kissed Eden's forehead. No business deal ever felt like this. When the twins met Eden, Micah stood tall like a soldier. Don't worry, baby. I'll protect you. Zaria frowned. She's too small. Are you sure she's ours? Isla laughed. She's very sure. Zaria brightened. Then she can have my sparkly blanket. Roman knelt beside them. You two are the best big siblings in the world. Micah grinned. We learned from the best. Weeks passed. Roman returned to work part-time, but only from home. Meetings happened in the study between diaper changes and bedtime stories. When board members complained, he calmly replied, Family is my priority. The empire can wait. Ayla's confidence blossomed. No longer tiptoeing, she now spoke with quiet power. She launched a small home bakery, Eden's Table, named after their daughter. Orders grew. So did her sense of purpose. Roman proudly delivered cupcakes himself on weekends. I don't need a press release, he told a friend. I need to be present. One Saturday, Ayla sat on the porch swing, Eden asleep in her arms. Roman sat beside her, sipping iced tea. Remember when you said you didn't want my guilt? He asked. She nodded. I'm glad you waited for my sincerity instead. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I knew it was in you. I just couldn't teach it. He kissed her temple. You lived it. That was enough. The mansion, once cold, now rang with life. Zaria sang made-up songs in the bathtub. Micah asked deep questions like, do clouds get tired? Eden cooed and reached for everything. And Roman? He sat in the middle of it all, feet on the couch, spit up on his shirt, heart in his hands. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, Ayla and Roman walked outside under the stars. He pulled something from his pocket. A chain, simple, gold, with 3 tiny charms, an M, a Z, and an E. For your strength, he said. For every night you stayed up alone. For every day you chose to keep going. Isla stared at it, tears rising. I don't need this. I know, he said. But you deserve it. She hugged him, tighter than ever. They didn't have everything, but they had peace. They had love. They had family. And every night, when Ayla whispered bedtime prayers and Roman leaned down to kiss her and the children, he always ended with the same 3 words: "No more paper." And Ayla would reply, "Just love." If this story moved you, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Don't forget to like, comment your favorite part, and subscribe for more inspiring stories of love, strength, and real-life lessons. Because sometimes the quietest love stories are the ones that teach us the most.